everyone. You're watching Mayshad Choice live conversation. I'm Neza. Hello, everyone. You're watching Mayshad Choice live conversation. I'm Neza Alawi, founder and CEO of Mayshad Choice, the New York-based company that empowers women on daily basis. I am here today with Jan Mercer-Dams, our VP Development, and Dr. Risa Ryger, our clinical psychologist and investor in Mayshad Choice. Chrisa Zindros will be joining us later today. Risa is a consultant, executive coach, and educator since 2009, and also an investor at Mayshad Choice. Hi, Jan.
Hi, Neza. Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome. So happy to start the week with you each and every week. I'm Jan Mercer-Dams, Vice President of U.S. Development with Mayshad Choice. As you know, we are an ecosystem of brands for women by women, all champion how we connect with each other and create value and wealth and meaning in the world as we connect with each other and with the companies, causes, and institutions that support and champion equity for women professionally and personally. As you know, we host with Dr. Risa Ryger every Monday at 4. We also do our diversity, equity, and inclusion series Tuesdays at 11. Tuesdays at 4. Please make sure to tune in Tuesdays at 4. And our Women in Money series Thursdays at 11, complemented with Workshop Wednesday, where we bring together groups of women for all things related to career advancement. And we also host in-depth brain trust sessions where we bring together intimate groups of women for conversations. We invite all of you to participate today by sending in your questions to our feed. We'll answer those at the end of today's show. In addition to visiting us at joinmayshad.com, that's join Mayshad, Mayshad, for information on how you too become a choice. Thanks, Neza. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Jan. So today's theme is about practicing authentic optimism in our relationships. Dr. Ryger, you're an expert in relationships. What are some of the things that are coming out in your work right now?
First of all, hi, Neza. Hi, Jan, and welcome, Chris, and welcome all the women and perhaps men who've joined us today. Welcome to our community. We are in community. We are part of community. And as Mayshad women, we are here to support each other always in every way possible. And this is one of the ways that we do it, by having conversation on Mondays. And so to look at, what do we mean by authentic relationships? What do we talk about when we're talking about authenticity? What are we talking about when we're talking about authentic optimism in our relationships and in our lives? And so the first thing that's always important to note is that you can't have optimism unless you see the whole picture. One of the things about not seeing the whole picture is that not only will no one else believe you, but you're also really not going to believe yourself, because you're not going to have an internal foundation to stand on to know that you are seeing what needs to be seen. And only at the point when you're allowing yourself, and maybe at times even pushing yourself to see what needs to be seen, can you then develop that space of authenticity for yourself and in use of relationships with others. And so as we're talking about relationships, we'll just take a moment and talk about the relationship with ourselves, because that's where relating begins, of what is happening in us, what is happening with us, what is happening as our lives have changed so profoundly, and we're not doing the kinds of activities and the kinds of busyness that we used to have before. And so in the absence of the running and going and the things that would take up so much of our time and so much of our energy, certainly at this point, look, there are lots of things that are taking up our time and energy, but it is in the absence of the kind of busyness that we experienced before. And so who are we? who are we with ourselves without the backdrop? And Jan, we had mentioned clutter. And so, one of the things that's happening with people is that, you can't have control over what's going on in the world, but you can have control about how you're folding your t-shirts. You can have control of how organized your spice cabinet is. You're putting together your winter clothing from your spring clothing. There are things that you can have control over, and also feel by organizing and decluttering that it has an internal optimism for you, an internal experience of being on top of this. Now, if we take the decluttering, right, and we take that and we bring it inside ourselves, what does that look like? And we now have the opportunity to look at decluttering, look at ourselves from this background, both for ourselves and in our relationships. And so, who are we? Who are we when we're not running around? Who are we? How do we relate to ourselves? What are we noticing about ourselves that might be surprising us? What are we noticing that may be surprising us about, oh, I never really appreciated that in myself? And that's one possibility. And then there's, of course, the possibility of looking and saying, hey, this is something I really need to pay attention to, and I didn't realize it to this full extent. Or perhaps you didn't realize it at all. And so it's this extraordinary opportunity because we have a marker in time now. We have a before. I mean, in some respects, we have a globally acknowledged before. We don't have an after yet. We have a before and we have a now. And so we have this marker in time that as participants in humanity, as part of our community, that we can look at and acknowledge and point to together and have that shared experience. And so with this backdrop, we're able to utilize it for understanding and appreciating and growing in who we are. And then in a moment, we'll talk about other relationships as well. But I'm sure Jan, as one of you wants to hop in.
Yes.
Point.
Dr. Ryger. So for years, we've been talking about this concept of negative people and positive people, and how we definitely need to keep a distance with negative people and try to create circles of people that envision the entire image as you talked about it. And what's amazing is that when you encounter these people out of your specific context, they will always try to diminish the challenges that you have as a positive people, and they will try to maximize the ones that they have. So then comes COVID-19, that is a challenge and a slap for everyone at the same time. And here you see again the positive people who, even though it is such a big challenge that we all had to face, will still be and stay positive and try to find a way to actually be supporting to others and to their surrounding and so on. So I personally like that, because I was on the positive side, and I was like, that's interesting, because now we're all equal facing a challenge, and you just see how, no, the positive people will still find a way to stay strong and to stay still and to find a way. How do you explain that on a psychological level, Dr. Ryger?
Neza, as always, such a good question. And I'm always, no matter what I think I'm going to be talking about here during this time with you all together, that there's always something new and different that comes up, and always new and different thoughts to share with you. So as you're listening to this for the first time, we are as well. And so we are not scripted. We are in this together. And so we zig and zag together. So people have their personalities, people have their coping mechanisms. And so it's at the time of challenge when you really figure out, who is able to do what. And sometimes the who and the what we have to really have compassion for. And because there are some people who, the challenge is there and they have a kind of a growth mindset of I'm going to get in there. And that doesn't mean that this is great and I'm just going to grow, because part of strength and certainly as women, there's a lot of, confusion between being nice and being, passionate, or being what's called emotional, that is attributed to weakness, where in fact it is absolutely the opposite of that. And it's absolutely the manifestation of strength. And it's one particular model of the stoicism that's supposed to represent strength. But that's only one model. And that is not a model that we have to sign up for. There are many other models, and showing our humanity and showing when we are upset and we are angry and we are feeling despondent at times, that being able to embrace that is part of our strength. Now, for people who are having, they're having a hard time showing up, they're having a hard time showing up for themselves. And of course, I think that as I say this, I'm wondering if everyone here has had the experience of knowing people who somehow going from your home to their home is somehow much easier and much faster, somehow miraculously, than it is for them to come to you. So that it's, always, that you should go and you should be the one to do, because it's just so much harder going the other way. And so one of the opportunities that we have now, and at these moments of clarification and these moments of clarity, because what we strive for here is clarity. So two things. One is clarity, and one is what we've been talking about is developing our emotional stamina. And so it's a time of clarity that we can look and see the people who it's always harder for them to come to you. Somehow it's always much more complicated. It's always much harder. And so what we're able to do, having more clarity, is that we're able to decide how much impact we're going to allow this person to have on us. There are people who are going to be part of our lives always, or for a long time to come. And we may not have choice over that. But what we do have choice over is how much power we really want to give this person to be able to get us off our track, to be able to hijack us emotionally, to be able to turn us kind of upside down and go like, what happened to me? Let alone them. But what happened to me that in the presence of this person or an interaction with this person that I am unable to hold my own and to stay connected with the who of who I am? So that's one part. And so as we also move into more intimate relationships and partnership relationships, Jan, Nessie, do you want to do that now, or you want to hold off a little bit on that now?
Jan.
Let's go for it, Risa. Go for it.
All right. Green light. We're all in. Okay, let's go. All right. So one couple that's been, pretty public about their relational struggles has been Jada and Will Smith. And apparently they've had some relationship difficulties before. And here we are now. We're in, for the most part, we're really in a very unusual spot. I mean, we're spending time with our partners in ways that we never spend time with them, ever. We are in enormously close quarters with them and without break. And so one of the things that they discovered and said it with tremendous honesty was that they felt like they just didn't know each other. They've been married for a long time, 20 years, I don't remember exactly what, but it's been more than a day and more than a minute. And they just felt that they didn't know each other. Now, at the point when that happened, after being in a relationship for such a long period of time, well, they could have avoided it, right? That's one possibility. They could avoid it and say, we're just not going to deal with this. Or they could have gotten pessimistic and said, we're just done. We're done. We don't know each other. We're done. And the other option was to be able to work on the relationship and say, hey, we don't know each other, but that doesn't mean that we necessarily can't. We will use this opportunity. We will use this time to be authentically optimistic, to get to know one another again, and to see who we are at this point in time. Because when we start out in relationships, even if whether you've been married for a year or less, or that you're not currently in a relationship, or you're starting a relationship, or you've been married for a long time, or together in some form of partnership and relationship, because we know that relationship does not take one form. There are many, many forms, and it's so great that we have so many options in front of us right now. And that the person who we started out with at one point of time, regardless of how long ago that time was, hopefully in some respects, we are not the same people, and neither are they. And so we have an opportunity now to update who we are in this relationship. We have an opportunity to update the relationship. So the person who may not have been emotionally available earlier on in the relationship, who couldn't divine, even if, hot coals were pressed under their feet, what am I feeling at this point? All of a sudden, they now can talk about feelings. And so it gives us this incredible opportunity. And I'm not saying, for those of you who've tuned in already, I'm not like, this is, how great is this? Because it's not. We're not here because things are great. We're not sitting in our homes because things are great. We're doing what we can with it. And that's the difference. We're doing what we can. But it gives us that opportunity to update our relationships and who we are and how we want to continue to grow in the relationship. We don't have to be who we were then. We don't have to be that. And so we get to see each other with the eyes of now. We get to see each other. We get to have the experience of this person who we're now spending a whole lot of time with, right? That all of a sudden we see like, wow, they're really nice about this and they were very thoughtful about that. Or this is not so cool. This is really not so cool and we've got to address it. And within ourselves to see who we are and to be able to look at ourselves honestly and with a curiosity and an openness and say, that last interaction when I was asked about a cup of tea or coffee or whatever it was, I was really not on the best side of who I am, right? I was not on the best side of who I am. And what we have is we have the opportunity at this moment to look at how do we deal with ruptures in our relationships. Now, there are little ruptures, right? Because as soon as you want something and somebody says no to you and you want them to say yes, there's a little rupture, right? There's mini ruptures. We have mini ruptures. But there are some ruptures that are really toxic ruptures. And so whether we're in mini ruptures, kind of medium ruptures, or toxic ruptures, that we need to know what is our path to repair. And we need a path of repair. And that aspect of it is really, really important because there's always going to be rupture. There's always going to be that internal disappointment of, I wish they hadn't said that, done that, forgotten that, not done that, whatever that may be. But we have our moments of disappointment. And it has to do with the deal.
Are you recommending patience there? Are you recommending for us in our relationship to have more compassion when it comes to those moments of small ruptures?
Yes. Try it. Try it. Try it. See how that works for you. I mean, the people that I'm working with, both the people that I'm working with in their relationships, the people that I'm working with who are in management positions, and we're working in terms of how they show up for people at work. And we'll talk about that another time, but that bring compassion. I mean, if you start with compassion, but that's without compassion, without acknowledging what you're experiencing and what you're feeling, really isn't compassion. Compassion is really about feeling what you're feeling, identifying what you're feeling, and still taking that step toward someone and not taking that step away from. And see how that sits with you. See how that sits with who you are, how you view yourself, who you think you are, and who you are in action and reality on a daily basis, from the small stuff to the big stuff.
Risa, a question, as I'm hearing you and kind of thinking about like, how do we connect the dots, all of this, right? And so I love the analogy around cleaning out the clutter, because so many of us are doing that around the house now, right? From home projects that have been left untouched for years, to cleaning out closets, to cleaning out cupboards, to whatever, to dusting spots in the home that we may never have even imagined before, right? And taking that time to think about then what else is happening from the mindset, in the sense of how we clean out the clutter mentally, and focusing in on those moments and times that we can show up as our better selves, as our best selves. And yes, that pertains to relationships we have within the home. But then once we go back out to whatever the new normal is, there's also, I'm sure, techniques and tips that we can use for what comes next, right? And so as we're practicing more authentic optimism within the home and within ourselves, and staying truer to ourselves, but then when we all go back to whatever that is out there, how do we ensure that we're staying grounded within ourselves for whatever work that we're doing now, that we can actually create something that's better in our relationships and for ourselves moving forward?
Well, one of the things that we talked about just briefly is that it's not like, we've been in a snowstorm and we've all been hunkered in and in a snowstorm, and now, the roads have been cleared and we can get out and we can just pick up where we left off. We're not picking up where we left off. We don't know what that's going to look like. And so one of the things that we need to do is that we need to bring that skill set, and whether or not it's a skill set that we're using externally, but that we don't leave behind who we are. And that as we're walking out the door with our masks on and trying to keep our 6 feet of distance, that we hold on to who we are. That doesn't end when we're able to walk into a department store. That doesn't end when we're able to walk into a restaurant. That who we want to be, who we have been practicing, how we want to show up in the world, in ourselves, for ourselves, and with others, that doesn't get left in the door of social distancing, which doesn't have to be distant. That's physical distancing. We don't have to leave that in our homes. We're going to need that more than ever, because we don't even know the challenges that we're going to be coming up with. And so the capacity that we have been developing for resilience, for adaptability, for this unique kind of problem solving, for bringing kindness, for bringing, I know that in my home, we've got 4 people living here now, and everybody's got their own moments. And I just, even when it's really hard, I tell myself, I say, just bring more love, bring more love. And it's that this is the other thing about saying I tell myself to bring more love is that this is not a passive process. Jan, Neza, Chrisa, this is not a passive process. This is an active process.
Risa. I love what you're saying about the fact that it's not a passive process. It is not a passive process. We are not naturally good and nice and positive people. It's an exercise that we're doing. If we let ourselves go as human beings, we will go into the dark side. Like anything, we work on being something positive. We work on training ourselves. We work on training ourselves with skill sets. Even a language that you learn as a child, if you don't practice it, you will forget it. Any knowledge. So yes, I think it's a good part to emphasize on that, because maybe when people are seeing us and seeing those three positive women that come here every week, and our guests, and they might think that we're making it sound so easy to reach, and it's not. It's not. It's a choice that we make every day. So please tell us a little bit about that, Dr. Ryger, about that choice to train ourselves into. Go ahead.
Yes. So it goes a little bit like this in its most simplistic form, is that we bring awareness to our patterns of behavior and how we respond. And so what is change? Change is taking a moment in a situation and having a moment of reflection, like this, a moment of reflection of how am I going to respond to this? Now we can react to it, but what we know and what we are hopefully or keep practicing at this point is the difference between reacting and responding. And so that we have a clarity in ourselves of which way we're going to go. So that a change is about, instead of going into reflex, instead of going into reactivity, we take a moment and like this, like this, we ask ourselves, wait a minute. Is that what I want to do? Is that the way I want to respond? I mean, I know that, with kids, I mean, with partners, we know exactly what's going to get us into a bad dance, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, I can't believe I did that again. Because I know exactly what's going to happen. I can't believe I did that again. Like, and we're in the same place. Gee, how could that have happened? We know exactly how that could have happened because that's what happens. But if we pull ourselves back consciously, it's like the itch we want to scratch. We want to say the same thing. We want to, go in there in the same kind of way. And it's like not scratching the itch. It is a hard thing to do. It takes effort. It is a decision. It takes effort. It's sitting with that discomfort. It's letting the itch be itchy. And so that we decide, I am not going to do that. I'm going to do something different.
Risa,
and that's the process.
Risa, don't you think also this is a big part of this is knowing that you're not alone in this as well? Right. And this comes out time and time again when we have our small group brain trust discussions, mm-hmm. where women will say to us, highly accomplished women will say to us, well, I thought I was the only one experiencing this. I thought right now I was the only one going through this. And it just helps so much to be able to know that other women are going through the same types of, even though different circumstances, different time of the day, different, processing in the sense of how we're coming to terms with COVID-19, but just understanding that not every day is going to be the same day and not every day is going to be a positive day, but also understanding that we don't always have to show up perfect, right? And giving each other a break to be able to come to the table and know that we have that safe space to be able to know that, that we have each other's backs too, right? And, talk to us a bit about how incredibly important support systems are in helping us get to the other side.
Support systems are crucial. Support systems are so important, and particularly for women. And, I think we're going to save this as a topic for another time. A personal thing for me is perfect. That we, as women, we have this idea. It's almost like this initial stance of being less than, not being enough, not doing it as well as other people, not doing it as well as other women, that we have this illusion, we have these fantasies that, well, I'm here struggling, right? And if I was more, if I was better at, if I just didn't have these flaws, that I too would look, would be like the women around me I see who are just navigating this with growth and optimism. And we are working it. We are working at it. And there's many times we do not succeed, whatever succeeding looks like, that we give it a try. Sometimes we don't try. Sometimes we have more energy to try. But that one of the most important things that we can do is we're talking about compassion, that the first place and the hardest place for women, I've had women that I've worked with and I've spoken to them and I said, listen, you know that compassion that you have for your friend and this other friend, and you're just incredible. How about bringing a little bit of that compassion to yourself? And you know what I've heard? And I kid you not, the women start to laugh. They start to laugh as if you got to be kidding me. It's like, and so this is part of our challenge, is to bring the compassion to ourselves. And so that when the moment that we're thinking that we are really just botching this, we are so off the mark. We are so far from how we should be doing this and how we should be responding, that we get to really feel awful about ourselves because we have this illusion that everybody else is just skating through this seamlessly without a bump in the road. This is not true. This is not reality. This is fantasy. And that's the issue. And so at the point when you're starting to perhaps berate yourself a little bit, belittle yourself a little bit, have that old feeling pulling at your chest of, I'm just not, if I was better at this, if I was good enough, I would be able to pull yourself back right at that moment, and know that the women in your community who are competent and capable and smart and amazing problem solvers and are running companies, running businesses, making the wheels turn, that we are all, every single one of them, and us, every single one of us are having our times of struggle. And it's in sharing that struggle that we become even stronger.
Risa, I really liked what you said earlier in another part of this conversation as well, is that it's almost like your personal mantra, right? Like show more love, show more love, show more love. And there's so many different spaces and places that I think that we could all use that right now, in the sense of helping us to have those internal conversations with each other, in the sense of then how we relate with each other.
Absolutely, Jan. We have the conversations with one another. We have the conversations with ourselves. And when we have the conversations with one another, it's also a way of prompting the women around us, prompting the women who are, this is our sisterhood. Like, I've said, I haven't, in my life, I haven't had the benefit of having a biological sister. However, I have sisters. And I turn to my sisterhood. At moments of like, this was a good thing. I turn to my sisterhood at moments of, hey, I'm just stuck. I am feeling overwhelmed. This has been really, really hard. And it's in that space that we remind each other that is not weakness. That's what life looks like. That we all have that, whether or not we want to admit it. We all have it to different degrees. And that we're here as a safety net. We are here for one another as the virtual hug. If we could, part of our Monday's conversations is about bringing the hug around our community, right? And so in that hug, we take a stance of kindness, and hopefully some of that non-judgmental acceptance we also bring to ourselves.
Thank you, Dr. Ryger. So we're going to welcome our guest today who has just joined us, Chrisa Zindros. Chrisa has been a consultant, executive coach, and educator since 2009. Her clients, an international base of serial entrepreneurs, perennial corporate executives, and established individual contributors, hail from a broad range of sectors, including finance, legal, media, entertainment, fashion, technology, and government. Hello, Chrisa.
Hello, so good to be here.
Yes. So, Chrisa, today we're talking about authentic optimism. And clearly, with Dr. Ryger in this conversation, we have defined that authentic optimism means that optimism is not a mask that you can just put on because you'll get tired of it very fast. You cannot fake it. Authentic optimism is a conviction that needs to come from inside through an internal work process of getting to know yourself, getting to know, to build relationships that are healthy in your life. What do you have to say about that? Please tell us about your opinion about how to get to that level of authentic optimism.
Happy to. And then I want to say that I'm having technical difficulties. So if I freeze, my face will be in an unflattering position, but I will keep talking. So, I full-heartedly agree with what Risa said and the position you have taken on this particular topic. The thing I teach my clients about optimism or happiness is that it's really actually a discipline. It's a commitment to wanting to be happy. And it requires not only a commitment to wanting to be happy and having that conviction, but also to prioritize self-care. Whatever self-care might be for you, whether it's exercise, which is your physical well-being, mental well-being, or emotional well-being. It is a prioritization of those things and knowing yourself to know whether or not you need on a daily basis to do physical, mental, or emotional self-care, or it's a weekly basis or a monthly basis, but knowing yourself and being honest about it, making time for it, not feeling bad when you make time for it, and then also being really true to yourself and prioritizing it and not letting other things take that away from you. I think it's really important, especially for women. We oftentimes want to prioritize everybody else, and we will put to the back burner sort of like our own needs. But one of the things I tell my clients is that for anybody here, and this has happened to me plenty of times, if you've ever traveled without a toothbrush and you unpack your luggage and you see there's no toothbrush, most of us will get a toothbrush from the front desk the next morning. Or we might brush our teeth. I've done this plenty of times with like the toothpaste in your finger. Like you'll make do, right? You will figure it out, but you will definitely not go a week without brushing your teeth because it's a non-negotiable. Right? It's what makes you, it's how you present yourself. You're not going to let your mouth smell bad. But we don't treat self-care in this way. We treat it as negotiable. But the truth is it's just as important as brushing our teeth, except we're not honest about it and we don't hold that perspective. And then therefore it falls to the wayside. And then we become to feel disconnected from our authentic selves. And then we also start to lose our level of happiness, optimism, and trust in what's happening around us.
So, Chrisa, it's almost like a mind shift that we make in the sense of how we prioritize what's essential in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I love what you said about the toothbrush analogy, because I think that really just hits the nail on the head in the sense of, for us in our minds, like if we can make that shift between what we deem to be absolutely critical and a must have, right? And shifting the mindset in the sense of turning that into a must have as well. I'm also wondering, going back to our conversation with Risa around how we share space, right? And how we think about decluttering the mental stuff up here to allow for more space in our authentic relationships in the sense of how we show up for everyone who's under our roof or maybe under our roofs right now. Right? Yeah. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts on that as well.
Yes. So I made the joke to a few clients this week. The reason why I'm still married is because I travel quite a bit for work. And I've been on a plane since December. So it's trying for everybody, right? Being confined, the only person you're really, spending free time with, the only person you're speaking to, you're stepping on top of each other. So in terms of sharing your physical space, it becomes much more challenging, as you all spoke to earlier, to be kind and gentle and caring, compassionate and sensitive. But then also what's true, we have so many other responsibilities, even though we're working from home. We still have to maintain, our families and check in on our parents or deal with social circles. We still have networking events via Zoom. So while maybe we're not required to physically show up, we still have to show up emotionally and mentally for people. So there really is a technique that I've always used to help me get clear, and I'll share it with you all because I think it's really useful. So usually when we are upset or dealing with somebody who has hurt us, or we're feeling really confined, we really are sitting in that we're the victim of the situation. And we're really sitting in the fact that they've wronged us and everything is against us and the problem is insurmountable. And to some degree, many of those things are true. But the reality is that we always have an ability to change how we're showing up. And we always have the ability to sort of like pen how we want the situation to go. So the tool that I use for myself, it's basically taking everything that is in your head, all the anger, upset, and writing it down. And you get it on paper, and it's nonsensical, lots of swear words, doesn't make any sense, whatever, crazy vomit on paper. And when you do that, you take an opportunity to get everything out. So it's very cathartic. I often tell my clients, actually get a notebook and stab the pen in the paper and write out how much you hate everyone. It really feels good. Okay, so you do that, and then you walk away. And then when you come back after a few minutes, you read it, and then you're often surprised, like, I can't believe I actually think these things. It's fascinating that this is what I think is happening in the world. But when you read it, you get to have a little bit of like levity associated with it, because you can hear somehow how your mind is making a drama, or maybe you're really just hurt and you can see how your hurt is making you be angry because you don't want to be vulnerable with someone. So once you have an opportunity to digest it, the next step is to actually respond back to it. Like, what is true about this? What can I do? What conversation do I have to go have? Who do I have to apologize to? Like, what rules do I have to put in place for myself? So you're left with, what was like in your head that was taking you down, and the ways you hated everybody in your household. And then what the next step is, which is like the process that you're now going to go put in place. And usually what that talk back leaves you with is one of three things. It leaves you with something you have to go do, like an action, whether it's exercise or call your parents. It leaves you with a request that you have to go make, or a boundary to put in place. And the last thing is it illuminates something you have to work on in yourself, whether it's, as Risa spoke about earlier, having community, asking for space, being kinder to someone else, dealing with your fear. It leaves you with something deeper to then go build awareness around, so they don't keep getting triggered over and over again. So I find this to be really useful. I have been doing this like on a regular basis because it really does give me a moment to really take myself down and not be so charged. And because there's so many triggers at this time, it's a great way for people to just get centered. But the other thing I will say is, because we're living with only a few people, if we are upset, even if it's not at them, and we're constantly kind of like dumping our negative space on somebody else, it brings down their space too. So in service of those that you live with, it's really important for you to take care of yourself and help sort of like manage your mood by doing a version of this, whether it's you're doing it on a piece of paper, or you're calling a friend that you can really trust who's not going to let you get away with the world sucks and everyone's against you. It's important that you do that so that you're not poisoning your household and the people closest to you.
Chrisa, this is, in large part, this is also about boundaries, and you had mentioned boundaries before as well, which boundaries, as we know, it's hard to set boundaries now, right? Because we're simultaneously living, working, cohabitating, caretaking, everything that we normally do in our worlds, we're now all just doing it under one roof, right? And wondering if you have tips and tricks for us in the sense of how we could set better boundaries, just even for ourselves, so that we are able to practice more self-care.
Yeah. So I will start off by saying that I am not someone who necessarily likes a schedule or likes predictability. I definitely am a fly by my seat of my pants kind of girl. But one of the things that I think is really important in this time, because we are all experiencing this like run-on sentence, And we are really experiencing that, like the morning blends, I start my day at 9, I look up, it's always 3 o'clock whenever I look up. I don't know how it always becomes 3 in like a half a second, but it's 3 and then it's 9 again. So we're having this experience where time is flying by. We're working from our kitchen tables and then trying to have dinner at our kitchen table. And it's causing this sort of like, almost like one note, one experience. And so the thing that I recommend to people is to really put in place routines that work for you. And routines are really important because if you consider what a routine is, right, it's something predictable in your day and it starts and stops something. Also, we can look at routines and say, call them rituals if we wanted, or traditions, or best practices, insert whatever word works better for you. But a routine allows you to have domain over your day. And it also allows you to set yourself up for something and then take yourself out of it. So in terms of boundaries, I always advise my clients to set up routines that will start your work day and then end your work day. Whether it is something, if you're going to start your work day, you want to make sure you eat appropriately, or maybe do a quick workout beforehand, or even just set up your workspace. And then when you're done, to also do the same thing, right? To have a routine that sort of concludes your day so that you're not feeling kind of trapped by this like time that keeps going on and on. And within those routines, there is an element of obviously having the physical things you have to go do, getting dressed, setting up your workspace, eating breakfast, working out, but also the mental and emotional things that you have to go do. And in that's where the boundaries come in place, where you have to tell people, you know what, between the hours of 9 and 2, don't come bug me unless you're on fire or the house is, right? And really being clear about that, and then closing your door and not responding when someone's bugging you, like really actually putting in place the discipline to go do that.
Thank you, Chrisa. Thank you, Risa. Should we go to questions? Questions from our audience. Everyone, please, we want to hear from you today. So please feel free to send us in questions. We have one here already. Let's see here. Here we go. Okay. We as women are often too hard on ourselves, which is what we've been talking about today. How do we learn to give ourselves and others grace in the midst of all of that? And I love that word, grace. Let's talk about grace. Risa.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I started using the word grace in how we give and how we receive. And so that when we are in need of help, that we allow someone to help us without them having to jump through hoops, really swear that they really mean it, swear up and down that it's not going to undo their entire lives. And after we've set the hoop on fire that they need to jump through in order to be able to be helpful to us, we allow them to give it to us. And so to be able to say that, thank you so much, to allow someone to give with grace, that's such a gift that you're giving to someone, to allow them to give to you, because that's how people feel good. A lot of our internal instinct is to be giving, to be helpful. We feel good when that happens. And we sometimes make it so hard because it's like that we shouldn't need it. We shouldn't need it. And it's some sort of a capitulation to accept it. And so if we can just with much more ease, allow someone to give to us with grace, and also to give to someone in a way that speaks to how much respect you feel for them, and not from the place of that I can and you can't. That there isn't any type of implicit, even if it's not explicit, but implicit way that people are giving, that just intimates, and we know what that looks like. It can look like a look and a tone of voice, the way that you move your body, that I'm bestowing this. The person I'm bestowing this on you because I've got this abundance and blah, blah, blah. But that when we give, we also give with respect. We give with caring. We give in a way that doesn't have a one up, one down piece of it, but that I see you, I care about you, and right now I can. And there'll be another time that you can, maybe differently, but there'll be another time. And it's okay. No, we're not keeping score here. So grace, I think, is important. And I just wanted to, Chris, I think you said something like so great about getting your journal and right. And that one of the things that we know and to remember also, no matter whether you're being given to or you're trying to give to someone, that feelings change. The way you feel at that moment isn't how you're always going to feel forever and ever. That feeling is going to pass, and to help yourself to feel comfortable that you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
Thank you, Risa. Chris, I'm wondering, you consult and advise C-suite level executives. And, as we think about what relationships are also the people that you work with, because, in many cases, you actually see those executives more than what you see, your own intimate family members and friends when you're at work, right, in the workplace. And I'm wondering, in the work that you're doing now, as it pertains to this conversation, what's coming up for the executives that you coach?
So the biggest conversations we've been having is how to boost happiness. And what's really true is that we've often been taught that once you're successful, you'll be happy. So once you accomplish X or Z or Y, then you'll finally feel good. But the real truth is that happiness is what creates success. And we don't spend a lot of time focusing on that in our society. We're so driven, we can be pretty ambitious, and we forget that it's an internal job always, and we very much focus on the external. So what's been coming up is how to be responsible for boosting your own happiness, which in turn will always deliver the result of more success and productivity. And for everyone, that looks a little different, depending on what people are up against. Some people are really in the throes of trying to save their companies. Other people are, we're going to survive, we're going to be fine. And yet others know that on the other side of this, there's going to be a lot of pivoting and a lot of innovation required. So the thing that I've been landing my clients in is that we can all live in the current circumstance, and it's crazy current circumstances. They're insane. But one of the things that optimists do very well is that we can see the current circumstance, understand it, feel it, be in it, and then deal with our feelings around it, process them, talk about them, go get space and support around our feelings, and then go live in the vision. Go live above and beyond the current reality. Live in the position where we can be inspired, see the opportunity, see the possibility. And that's really what this conversation is about, is how do you maintain your optimism? And the only way you can do that is to have a vision for yourself. So whether the vision can only extend as far as like a week or a day or a year from now, really being clear on where you want to see yourself. And I don't mean what you want to accomplish, but how you want to feel, present, connected, intimate, proud of how you treated your team, happy how you showed up with your family, great in your body. That's really what keeps people moving forward at this time. And that's the crux of the work I'm doing with the leaders of companies. And on one level, on the individual level for themselves, but also on the other side for their own company. Because the thing is that people, when you're in a crisis, you need to look up to someone. You need someone to guide you. And if the leaders aren't able to somehow establish a vision that we can all coalesce behind, then we're all going to be afraid that nothing's going to be available to us after this. So leaders really do have a tall ask for both having a vision for themselves, but then also setting it for their companies.
Thanks, Chris. I think that's fascinating because it's so applicable for how we live in our personal worlds as well, right? Yeah. Particularly through this moment in time too. We have time for one more question. How is it best to employ optimism when it comes to thinking things will be better, if not the best? So thinking through optimism and how do we do optimism in an authentic way when we're thinking about the future?
Can I answer?
Sure.
So I think that part of like the concept of optimism is that it's not without the reality that things are hard or challenging or scary or sad. It's not that you deny those things. It's that you look at them and you understand that there is both a dark and a light to everything. there's dark and light to humans. We have positive personality traits and negative personality traits. There's dark and light to every instance and circumstance. So part of like maintaining optimism is being able to see both sides as evenly as possible. And then being able to understand your role in both sides or the impact of both sides for yourself. And then when it's really dark and when you have to deal with the dark, being okay to be vulnerable, to speak up about it, to get help, to gain support. And then when you've processed that, to be able to get to the other side and then live in the opportunity and have the discipline to go do so.
And to piggyback, Chris, on what you're saying, that also optimism, it's not a box that gets checked, that you either have it or you don't. That optimism is something that can be built incrementally. And there are people who have had really tough times in their lives. And so their inner orientation is for things to not work out, that can be a belief system. And that there's a shift, even if it hasn't been your experience at times, that optimism is something that can be built, and it can be built incrementally, but it's not an all or nothing. And so when we hear people who are, optimistic, well, maybe they're not optimistic about everything. Maybe they're optimistic about some things, and some things they're more worried about. But we're not all one thing. We are ands. We are this and that and that and that. And so optimism is not unattainable. Optimism can be built, and it can be built incrementally.
Thank you, Dr. Ryger. Thank you, Chrisa. I think it's a beautiful way to end this conversation, knowing that it's not the end of the weekly conversation and that we're going to have more and more. But I would like to add one more point to this. I think what the biggest fear of people in a situation which makes them negative towards a situation, it's that fear of an end of something, like a fatal end to something, the end of a relationship, the end of a project, the end. And we realize that when we're facing struggle and we are in that dark moment where the lights are off and we still need to navigate through, we realize when we are in that space that it's always less challenging than what we thought. It is challenging, but less defying and fatal than what we thought. And so that's what positivism is. It's just to kind of observe our past and realize that if we could survive through certain situations and we are in a dark moment of doubt, because doubt comes always, all the time, as you're creating, as you're moving forward, you will have those moments of doubt, and they're healthy and positive, because that means that you're taking on positive risks in your life. So just in that moment of doubt, to look back at the past and to think, this looks like very challenging, but I have the solution. The solution is out there. I just need to see it, and it will be less damaging than what we think. So we're gonna end this episode. That was very exciting. Dr. Ryger, next week, we will be 1 week before the end of the confinement, and I would love us to have a conversation on how to take that life back by staying positive, healthy, and all the measures. Chrisa, we would love to host you again in one of the shows, and we're waiting for your workshop that we'll be producing together. Jan, thank you so much. It's always great to co-host with you.
So wonderful to co-host with you too, Nez. And I love this group. I love having two investors on the show at the same time. It's just such magical energy. Please make sure everyone to visit us at joinmayshad.com. Contact us to learn more about how you too can become a Mayshad member for a whole host of different benefits that come along with actually being a part of the future that we're creating together. I think, Risa, you wanted to say something at the end too.
Yes, I always forget to say that I have a PDF that you can all please get. You can see, how to get it. My email address is available. Please let me know if you'd like it. I'd love to send it to you and for you to have this resource to be able to continue your process through this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. So fun being with you guys today. Such a great conversation.
Thanks, Chrisa. Thanks, Risa. Thank you, Neza. See you soon, everyone.
Bye.